And of course, no politician will sacrifice their short-term economic welfare, even if they agree that sustainability is essential in the long term. But we are so divided in this world today. We have so many forms of division, politically within countries, between countries, and so on, that we aren't able to take united action. At the UN Commission on Sustainable Development, last May, when they came to debate the energy issue, the small island developing states said, we have to do something to stop burning the fossil fuels. The oil-produced OPEC countries said, we must keep burning fossil fuels. It's essential to our economy. The result was no decision. A failure in the negotiations, because they simply could not find any way of bridging these extreme differences. So climate change is just one symptom of the fundamental imbalances in our world, and we have to change the economic system in order to respond. This, of course, means change in the economic system itself. It's not giving the signals we need. And the idea that there's no limit to the Earth's capacity to grow, to develop, to exploit resources is false. We have to change the very basis of the economy. And our present culture, which attaches this absolute value to growth, to expansion, to satisfying our wants, has to recognize that this is no longer a guide to policy today. Economic decision-making can't cope with global problems. And therefore we have to try to learn how can we escape from this materialistic, self-centered kind of civilization we have built in the West today. So different from that we saw reflected in the Inuit peoples of the Arctic. And we thought that we could get away with looking at ethical dimensions. And this dogmatic materialism has today captured all significant centers of power and information at the global level, ensuring that there are no competing voices to challenge projects of worldwide economic exploitation, which we have seen in the disinformation about the climate change issue, which we have seen in the resistance of governments and economic powers to face up to the issue. They've tried to prevent any debate. They've tried to keep us blocked in the situation as it is. And therefore, we need to look at this new faith, which has been materialism, and say maybe we need to change the values of society itself in some more fundamental way. Is it just that a small minority of people can benefit from all of the technology while everybody else suffers the consequences? And we have created this civilization fed by advertising in which we have to keep consuming without end. And we have turned what used to be considered sins in the religions of the past into all sorts of commercial advantages, whether it be falsehood becoming public information, greed, pride, violence, having social economic value. And yet our material civilization has lost the sense of meaning that has come from material culture. So climate change requires new ethical foundations for our society. We need to recognize that we cannot continue with economics as it has, and the materialism of truth in the rich, and the fact that it hasn't solved issues of poverty. So we need an economic that can serve people's needs. Society should not promote themselves to fit economic models. And the ultimate function of economics should be to help us cultivate the limitless potentials latent in human consciousness. This is not just raising GDP. We need to find a much more fundamental way at which we evaluate where we're going in societies today. We need, therefore, economics that builds a dynamic, just, and thriving social order that is strongly altruistic and cooperative in nature. This is not the competitive spirit of Darwinian 19th century, Adam Smith kinds of economics, the invisible hand of self-interest. It's the values that have to change behind the economic system. One that will create meaningful employment. Economics is not creating jobs today. On the contrary, it's looking for productivity. And it will eradicate poverty in the world. So the whole goals of the system must change in a fundamental way. And only such a system will give the right signals for challenges like climate change and sustainability. And therefore we need to find a balance between material civilization and divine civilization. Material civilization, it's like a dead body. Without a spirit within it, it means nothing. We have to be responsible for the environment long into the future, and therefore take an ethical approach to sustainability. to recognize that we need moderation and humility in dealing with nature, and look at it in more economic terms, and to see the spiritual as well as material development of man. And therefore, that sustainability is a fundamental prerequisite for spiritual development as well as our physical survival. And that we have to take the debate to a much more fundamental level. And therefore, as Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, said over 100 years ago, this civilization, so often vaunted, the learned exponents of arts and sciences will, if allowed to overleap the bounds of moderation, bring great evil upon men. The day is approaching when its flame will devour the cities. And I think this has much or more meaning today than it had when it was written over 100 years ago. It's not just to sacrifice the well-being of most people for the advantages of just a few. Again, justice is fundamental to finding a solution to the problem. Equity. How can anybody get anybody to agree on facing climate change at the world level if they don't see that we're all going to share the burden equally and get equal benefits from it? Only when they see that equity is behind it will they agree to any kind of a solution. It's not fair to say that some countries benefit and others have to make all the sacrifices. And that will be certainly the debate in Bali and the debate long afterwards. Okay. I've already been warned I have 5 minutes left, and so I'm caught between the... Yeah, okay. And therefore, if we're going to achieve any sustainable economic social development, we have to look at the ecological balance of the world as a fundamental importance. And therefore create a new civilization based on renewable resources rather than the resources we've been using today. So climate change may be the common threat that forces governments finally to work together in their collective interest. An ethical approach will be essential to convince all of us to act. Thank you very much.